Now, in the last hour, you heard the Hill's John Solomon tell us about Special Counsel Bob Mueller's possible conflict of interest due to his ties to a Russian oligarch. John is now here with an even newer breaking series of developments that were just posted moments ago on the Hill. Nobody's heard this before. It's stunning stuff. John, what else should we know? I mean, I read through your piece about a half hour ago when it was posted. Now we find out that in September of 2016,
that's right,
Oleg Deripaska, who's this guy made out to be this big boogeyman by the political parties and by even our government, on a sanctions list, he's visited by 3 FBI agents who want him to do what?
Yeah, it's great. So he's already been very helpful to the FBI. He spent $25 million of his own money trying to help them rescue one of their captured agents in Iran. So he has their trust. They bring him into the country because he had been banned from coming in by the State Department. They give him 8 or 10 passports to come in. And then it's 2 months before the election. He's asleep in his apartment in New York, and he gets a knock on the door by some of the same FBI agents that worked with him on the earlier operation. They said, "We think Trump's campaign and Russia are colluding on the election." And he lets out a big laugh.
Wait.
Yeah.
The agents say to a Russian billionaire.
Yes, close to Putin.
Supposedly close to Putin.
That's
I mean,
right.
all the billionaires know Putin.
True.
It's like all the billionaires in the United States know Trump, and all the politicians. Like, they always say that's like not a big deal.
Right.
But they say to him, we have an idea or a theory that he's colluding through what, Paul Manafort?
Paul Manafort was the person they mentioned, they thought. And here's the funny part. Oleg Deripaska had a tortured relationship with Paul Manafort. He hired him as a political consultant, wasn't happy with that, gave him some money for an investment. Deripaska sued him. They had a falling out. He said he stole my money, took it into the United States. So the guy they go to is an enemy of Paul Manafort, and they say, well, can you help us prove that maybe Manafort's colluding with Putin to throw the whole election to Donald Trump? And he laughs. He breaks out in laughter saying it's preposterous. And he said, no, seriously, take this seriously. And no, I'm telling you, it's not true. I don't like the guy. Listen, I'd love to smear him. I'm telling you, there's no chance that Russia is using Paul Manafort to coordinate an election. And that's important for 2 reasons. It's 2 months before the election. It's before the FISA application. And here's someone that the FBI trusted previously to give them reliable information, spend his own money doing FBI work. And now they're telling him no collusion. Does the FISA court know this? I bet not, from what my reporting indicates.
Again, so our viewers understand this. We have a situation where 3 FBI agents go to this Russian billionaire's apartment, who only can come to the United States because he's supposedly a bad guy, which by all indications, he was trying to help Bob Levinson get out of Iran, a 30-year veteran of the CIA who we left there. He tried to get him out 2 times, spent $25 million, as you said.
That's right.
Had a jet waiting on the tarmac, pulled back by the State Department for some weird reason. Hillary Clinton involved, Barack Obama involved, perhaps even the previous administration of that involved. They go to him and they say, we have a collusion idea. And he says, well, that's ridiculous. And they then say, keep an open mind, I understand.
That's exactly what they say. They're trying to keep them going. Keep an open mind. Let's stay in touch. And my reporting tonight indicates...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, let's stay in touch. Well, they've been in touch for quite a while.
Now, you have sources, strong sources for this reporting.
I do. Yeah, it's, including Deripaska himself is on the record, and his lawyer, as well as several FBI agents in the story. This is a story that's well-sourced.
I also understand that Deripaska offered to testify on Capitol Hill.
That's right.
I have 2 sources on this. Offered to testify, did not ask for immunity. It was reported by the New York Times falsely that he asked for immunity to testify. And also, I think someone in Congress also repeated that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So what I know...
He did not ask for immunity. Why are they smearing this guy? It's like, why are they smearing this particular person? I mean, he's someone who spent $25 million to try to get that patriot Bob Levinson out of Iran.
Yeah, there's a black hat, white hat, black hat syndrome with him. He's a bad guy for a while, probably treated that way. Then he's a great guy, let him in the country, no problem. And then with the same evidence that's been there all this time, now he's suddenly a bad guy again.
But he's a good guy that they apparently want to use to push this collusion theory, which if he wanted to try to get off this sanctions list, maybe he could have said, well, I'm sure Paul Manafort's colluding with some people, some agents, rogue agents in Russia. What can you give me? He didn't do that, correct?
No, he waved him off it in a hard way.
Okay. Let's bring into this discussion. This is unbelievable. It's like a John le Carré novel. Retired FBI Special Agent Tom Baker is here in Washington and attorney Harmeet Dillon in San Francisco. Guys, these details are moving fast and furious. John Solomon has done some of the most important reporting on this case, on Mueller, on the FBI, for months now, and now this. Tom, I want to start with you. You knew Bob Levinson, going back to the first part of this narrative. You knew him. You worked with him when I think he was at Counterterror, and you were at the FBI. And now we hear more details on this Russian billionaire spending $25 billion. 2 times, he had a good handle on getting him out of the country. Twice, and he was waived off twice. And now they try to use him for the collusion nonsense. It's an outrage. Well,
yes, it is. It is, and what was an outrage in that was the way the whole thing was waved off. Bob Levinson, I crossed trails with him a couple of times when we were both involved in Russian organized crime. I happened to be at that time the legal attaché in Paris, where Oleg Deripaska often would stop by himself. Actually, he spent a lot of time in Paris. But Levinson, we would try to do everything we could to get every part of the government moving on him. I was retired when he went missing. We got very little cooperation from the CIA and very little cooperation from the State Department, and the FBI had to reach out and do whatever they could themselves.
Now, why is the FBI, Harmeet, the FBI is actually doing the work to try to get the CIA guy out of Iran, reaching out, and again, I don't know if it's illegal or not, maybe, but working with this guy who had business interests in Iran, really rich, really connected, and I bet Deripaska wanted to know, why the heck am I being banned from coming to the United States? Show me the file. I'm such a bad guy. Show it to me. And he starts working with them. Like, again, motivations aside, right. That would have been a great thing to get him out of the country. State Department takes back the deal at the last moment on some seemingly spurious grounds. Go ahead.
Right. Well, what we have learned from Solomon's reporting is that, this was pulled off the table at the last minute because Hillary Clinton refused to say certain things that the Iranian government wanted said in order to point the finger away from them. And so, that said, this gentleman and most wealthy people in his position don't do things out of necessarily the goodness of their heart. There would have been an interest in it for him. And having good relations and ability to come and go from the United States is literally worth over $10 billion to his businesses. And so naturally he wanted to help and do a good thing as long as it didn't blow back on the Russian government. And so he was assured of that. He did what he was asked. McCabe was one of the people who recruited him. Yeah, and then this is how he's thanked. Yeah. This is how he's thanked. He's now on, a sanctions list after, by the way, refusing to, quote unquote, keep an open mind when FBI agents visit him. How do you keep an open mind if you're asked, did a crime occur? I mean, keep an open mind about it? What does that mean? That is incredibly shady and suspect. But, now we have a second instance here, Laura, of clearly the Department of Justice and FBI not giving all the information to the FISA court, because this is what we would call exculpatory evidence in a criminal investigation, where you ask somebody, did Manafort collude with the Russians on behalf of the Trump investigation? Deripaska, who would know, said, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? I hate his guts. He's cheating me in a business deal, but he didn't do that. I am quite certain, as Solomon just said, that was not revealed to the FISA court, because if it were, a judge would take a second look at that. And now Manafort is fighting in court for evidence of whether this is, even covered by the Rosenstein authorization. Right. And and Mueller has filed that information under seal. Again, I think the fact that this whole $25 million, you haven't even talked about the fact that the $25 million violates the Anti-Deficiency Act of our government, where the government's not allowed to take volunteer support from citizens if it's not authorized by Congress. Yeah. And so Mueller may be trying to cover that up because it is embarrassing to him that he violated the law.
We're going to stay on this. Thank you, Harmeet and Tom. Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with Hill reporter John Solomon on the big story he just broke. Special prosecutor Bob Mueller may be tainted by a conflict of interest in the Russia probe. Let's also bring in former FBI agent Robin Gritz in Chicago. Now, Robin supervised the Levinson case back in 2009. If you just tuned in, Bob Levinson, 30-year veteran of the CIA, held now for 11 years in Iran. We learned more details tonight about the efforts of a Russian billionaire, Oleg Deripaska, now on the U.S. sanctions list, to secure his release on 2 different occasions, spending $25 million. And now we learn that Oleg Deripaska was approached by the FBI in September of the election year, September 2016, where they floated an idea of, well, Manafort might be colluding with Trump, and what do you think about that? And he's like, I don't even like Manafort. The facts are ridiculous. The intent's ridiculous. That's absurd. And the FBI basically said, keep an open mind. That's wild. Robin, I want to go to you. Of course, you were on this Levinson case from the beginning. Now we're learning more about how this effort was strung along, shut down, at least on one occasion now by Hillary Clinton. Your thoughts tonight as these new developments are coming in?
When John gave me a call about what he was finding out, I was shocked. I had taken over the case about 7 months after Bob was arrested by the Iranian authorities, and we were turning over every stone to bring him back and working with a whole of government approach to bring him back. And now I hear, after I left the case, that there was actually a plane on the tarmac, and because of some changes in a statement, the agreement went downhill, and Bob remained in Iran, and I think is still there today.
Yeah, well, we hope he's still alive. I mean, he was he'd be 80 years old today. But
Yes.
we think, John Solomon, we don't leave a man behind.
Right.
If at all possible,
No,
we don't leave a man behind. And in this case, he was left behind, and we
Yes.
had the FBI and McCabe trying to be creative about
Yeah, he was.
Deripaska.
Absolutely.
Deripaska, by the way, had conversations with John McCain. Do we know what those conversations were about years ago?
I do. It's a story I broke at the Washington
Right.
Post 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
he was just trying to find
Yep.
out about policy, what the president would,
Okay.
the president might be for.
Yeah, heaven forbid we actually try to find out what the current U.S. government's all about. But getting back to the conflict of interest, Alan Dershowitz and Jonathan Turley had interesting comments. Let's first look at what Jonathan Turley said about all this. He's concerned about a potential conflict. He said if the operation with Deripaska contravened federal law, this figure could be viewed as a potential embarrassment for Mueller. The question is whether he could implicate Mueller, in an impropriety. And then Alan Dershowitz saying this. He also had similar concerns about a potential conflict. I think we have the full screen. He said, the real question becomes whether it was proper to leave him, Deripaska, out of the Manafort indictment, and whether that omission was to avoid a kind of transparency that is really required by the law.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to 4 or 5 legal experts. They all had the same assessment. They come from all different political viewpoints, very similar. Let's think about something. You said something really powerful. We don't leave any men behind. Think about how desperate the FBI had to be to go to a Russian oligarch and say, could you fund this? Because the United States government wouldn't fund it. The Obama administration, the State Department, the CIA would not go back and get their own man to the level that the FBI thought it deserved. So they go and reach out to this guy, and they have to fund an extracurricular activity to rescue one of our own men. And I think that's one of the saddest parts of this tale that gets overlooked.
And Hillary Clinton, obviously, as Secretary of State. Tell me about her potential involvement.
What we know is from the family. So Dave McGee, the lawyer for the family, told us on the record that they had a deal. Deripaska came back. They were sending the plane to the tarmac. We're going to rescue him. There was a statement that the Iranian government wanted, basically saying we really weren't involved in it. And Hillary Clinton was unwilling to give him that sort of absolution. And the deal fell apart. The plane left, and he was never rescued.
Well, you got to say. I mean, you kind of have to say what you got to say at that point to get. I mean, some stupid statement to Iran. I mean, who cares? I mean, Robin, to me, that's just a nothing. You wonder if there was any future concern about any Iran deal down the road. I mean, I don't know what was going into play, but then you fast forward, Robin, to the fall of 2016. Now, some of these agents who approached Deripaska in his apartment in New York, remember, he's only allowed to come into the United States on a few occasions, 1-by-1 visa. They approach him and they say to float this collusion idea, and he's like, what? Collusion with this Manafort? I mean, he's like kind of laughing at them, and they're like, no, keep an open mind. So they were actually trying to collude with a Russian billionaire to push the Russian collusion theory, Robin.
It's outrageous that all this is going on. It's like, it's stuff that you see in the movies. And to see that people that were working for the release of Robert Levinson have now switched and are actually pushing a political agenda. And you said something really interesting about Hillary Clinton and then the Iran deal. And when I actually was gone from the FBI when the Iran deal was signed, and I was waiting for Bob's name to be read. I was waiting for him to come home, and when his name wasn't read, it heartbreaking, because I want to clarify that Bob was actually an FBI agent for that amount of time. He was also a DEA agent. He was just like any of us when we leave government service. We contract with people. And yes, he was contracting with one agency, but he was talking to a lot of people, sure. Having to, all the kids and everything. And yeah, it's just the family.
The family has been through hell, and now they're suing
Yes.
Iran. I'm telling you, John,
Yes.
I think Republicans on the Hill, if it's not going to be Democrats, Republicans should call Deripaska to Washington. He's offered to testify without immunity. Don't lie and say he asked for immunity, because he didn't. Bring him up to the Hill, hear what he has to say. Question him, sharply question him. You don't have to trust what he said. Question him. I think the American people would like to know a little bit more about keeping the boogeymen of the Russian billionaires alive, to keep the big fantasy alive. Fantastic reporting. Robin, thank you for what you've done for your service to this country all those years. John Solomon, please keep us up to date on your reporting. Fantastic reporting. Any news from Mueller? Did Mueller respond to your reporting?
The proverbial no comment.
Proverbial no comment. We appreciate it, of course.